Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another series of lectures from Seek Sanctuary's GreenKarbon College Program 2022, supported by Morningstar and Carbon Copy. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming you all to a lecture by the trustees and uh, people from the Grasslands Trust, which is based out of Pune, and they do some exceptional work in the landscape closer to Pune and other parts of India also now, but mainly on the very less explored and also unknown and quite neglected landscapes of the grasslands. And they work in research, in monitoring, and also in rescue and rehabilitation for wildlife that is found in the grasslands. And I have the pleasure of introducing two of the very young and dynamic members from the Grassland Trust. That's Vishwatej Pawar and Pratik Joshi. Vishwatej is one of the trustees of the Grassland Trust, and he runs his family's hospitality business, Ramsukh Group. He has roamed many countries for leisure as well as for business and work. He is a very keen birder, and as I know him, he's an excellent photographer, and is also into films. He has also studied, I think, if I'm not mistaken, filmmaking somewhere abroad. And he I think works mainly with the trust as a creative person, as a camera operator while filming, as a video editor, speaker, and social media manager. Pratik is a trained environmentalist and a member of the Grassland Trust. He has a bachelor's and master's in the field of environment. He believes that the right way to conservation of wildlife is by working with the people, by creating awareness in the society and connecting the lay people to the depth of the facts and research work that is done on the field. Following the same principle, he has joined the Grassland Trust to conserve and protect the grasslands and scrublands, a rather neglected landscape, as I mentioned earlier. So let me hand it over to Pratik and Vishwatej. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. That was a very nice introduction.
Hi, and good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone.
So before we begin, I would like to suggest and request everyone to go in full screen mode and also keep a check on either of the chat or raise your hand option, because this is going to be an interactive session. So we are going to keep asking certain questions. So you can keep answering those questions in whichever way it is convenient to, or whichever way we ask you to answer the question.
All right. Start sharing. I'll just share my screen now.
So yes, do we start with a question?
So the attendees. So if anyone would like to answer this question, please use the raise your hand button, and we'll just allow the people to talk. To have raised hands.
You can also put it in the chat box, and I hope I think Pratik and Vishwatej, you can see the chat directly, right?
Yes, sir. We can also actually see the hands raised now. So yeah. So what comes to your mind when you hear the word Savannah? Harsh Shah has raised his hand. So
Africa, prairies, apex predators, prey, watering holes, desert, Kalahari.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much, Harsh. So, did you know that we also have savannas in India?
Nirmal has something to say.
Yeah, I guess it's African continent.
No, actually, we do have savannas in India as well, and that's what this whole session is about. And yeah, so now let's just see what Indian savannas look like.
There's one interesting answer in the chat box. It says Tej says open grasslands. So yes, you're close to the answer.
Yep. So this is a photo from one of the grasslands in Maharashtra, or Savannahs more specifically. So Savannahs are basically open habitats with an open tree canopy. And as you see in this photo, the trees are quite widespread. So most of the light reaches the ground and there's a continuous layer of grass in the undergrowth. So that's how you define a savanna.
So major family of the vegetation is covered by different species of grass, and the trees are sparsely distributed along the area or scattered through the area and doesn't form a dense canopy as what we see in the forest ecosystem. So that is the simplest way of explaining what savannas or semi-arid ecosystems are. Okay, so here we have a map which is being shown on the screen. And here is another question for everyone. Where all do you think are grasslands found in India or savannas found in India? You can either raise your hand or drop an answer in the chat box.
I'll just repeat the question quickly. Where do you think savannas are located in India? You can refer to this map which we're showing on the screen again. Chat.
Sparse rainy regions, Deccan Plateau. Okay.
Perfect. All right. So Harsh says that Deccan Plateau has savannas, which is right. Nirmal says sparse rainy regions. That's also right.
So yeah, you guys are perfectly on the track. If you look at the map over here, and if you start from the Himalayas, which is on the north of India, around Ladakh.
You can just follow the cursor as well.
So around Ladakh region, you will find cold, dry deserts, which is again a part of an open system and not really covered with tree canopies. As we move down to the Himalayas, we have alpine grasslands or alpine meadows. Then as we move to the northeast section, we have Terai grasslands, Terai grassland regions or Gangetic plateaus, which are again open grassland areas where you can see animals like rhinos and elephants which roam around in the grasslands. If we move on to the west, then you will see Thar Desert, which is Rajasthan, and similar type of ecosystem is found in Gujarat. And then once we come to, so that is Gujarat and Rajasthan region. If we come into the central Indian landscape, which is Madhya Pradesh and the area, you'll see deciduous forests, and the areas outside deciduous forests are always open grasslands or scrubland forests or scrub forests. And as we come down is the Deccan Plateau, where majority of our savanna ecosystems are found. And if we look at the map, on the peninsular region, you will find Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats on two of the sides. And if we understand the pattern of monsoons, these ghats actually block the rain or rain clouds which are entering the peninsular region, and hence we get more rainfall in the peninsular coastal area, and it forms a rain shadow area onto the Deccan Plateau, which comes to the condition as mentioned by Nirmal that it forms the sparse rainy region, which has moderate rainfall or low rainfall up to a region where droughts are also experienced. So that is the plateau area, Deccan Plateau area, where maximum rich biodiversity and savanna ecosystem is found. So we are going to mainly discuss about the Deccan Plateau region, and how they are formed is one, the rain shadow area having low amount of rainfall or water availability, or the Deccan Plateau being formed mainly because of basalt rock or volcanic eruptions which have formed layers on top of each other. So the layer of soil on top is thinner compared to that of what we see in the forest ecosystem. So it doesn't provide ample depth, soil depth for the larger trees to grow, which again supports a grass ecosystem or a grass vegetation, which leads to formation of vast landscapes of grasslands and savannas in the area. So that is how multiple factors are involved, which lead to formation of semi-arid savannas in our Deccan Plateau area.
So, as Pratik said, in this presentation and during this talk, we'll be talking mainly about Deccan Plateau. And so, in Deccan Plateau, where we are situated in Maharashtra, around Pune, there are some patches of savannas which are among the
most rich, biodiversity rich patches which have been observed through the studies along the Indian subcontinent.
Right, they're among the last remaining rich biodiversity savannas in India. So when I say around Pune, there's a beautiful area called Saswad, which is around 40 to 60 kilometers from Pune, where there are beautiful open savannas. Here's a photo show you the same. And we made a video about Saswad, and there's a complete series about grasslands and Saswad and the wildlife which is found over there, which we've made for a company called Roundglass Sustain. So we, the Grasslands Trust, have actually shot these videos. And I would like to quickly show you a video about Saswad, which is an open savanna near Pune. Just allow me to share. I'm just going to play the video now. So I request you all to switch to full screen if you haven't already. So you'll be able to see the subtitles as well.
Pune, a city of nearly 6 million people, has a quiet neighbor. A peaceful witness to its daily hustle. The grasslands of Saswad. Saswad is a mosaic of plains, dotted by farms and villages. It's also home to some special and threatened creatures. Here, people and wildlife have learned to live with each other. Many locals are shepherds, poultry owners, and farmers. Their sustainable traditional occupations make room for the wild. A unique system of coexistence plays out. Birds and animals tune their days to the cycles of farming. Sugarcane fields and fruit orchards teem with insects, rodents, reptiles and birds, perfect for smaller carnivores and even wolves to feed on. As farmers burn old grass to prepare their fields for the next crop, birds queue up to feed on insects flushed out by the fire. The seasonal bajra crop invites the vernal hanging parrot. Every monsoon, big flocks arrive to feed on their favorite grain. The shy and timid Bengal fox is spooked even by a chinkara. The smallest of all canids needs the cover of cultivated fields to hunt and make dens in. As the night falls, Everyone waits for the feast to begin. Poultry farms are a lifeline for many. Regularly dumped carcasses provide a buffet, and everyone awaits their turn. The nocturnal hyena gets the first share of the bounty. Soon the jackals follow. But over the years, this delicate balance has been threatened. Listed as wastelands, grasslands like Saswad face multiple threats from modern agricultural practices and rapid urban development. The use of pesticides may drive away insects and discourage migratory birds. Destruction of grasslands may push predators to look for food near human settlements, increasing chances of conflict and attacks on livestock. For now, despite no protection, many threatened but sturdy creatures negotiate a life here. A little attention could turn Saswad into a secure home for them.
So yes, this is how the basic landscape of Saswad and Savannahs around Pune look like.
And you also got a brief glimpse of the biodiversity which we were talking about, which exists in the savannas around Maharashtra. So by the end of the video, there was a segment where the narrator said that the delicate balance of these grasslands has now been threatened. And we've just listed some of the threats which the open savannas as the habitat face nowadays.
So yeah, habitat alteration is one of the major threats which the wildlife and biodiversity in the area has been facing, and it includes different activities like construction sites, developmental activities which are happening, or otherwise plotting schemes which are resulting into formation of fenced landscape which obstruct the movement of animals or change in land use patterns. One of the major threat in case of changing land use pattern is improper tree plantation or formation of controlled contour trenches, which is digging of trenches throughout the landscape, and which obstructs the movement of animals in some way or the other, or disturbs the animals in a direct or indirect way, which they face in this what we can describe it as a human-dominated landscape than that of a semi-arid savanna. So yes, after that, the anthropogenic factor, another one being den blocking, so which is observed in case of or is related to anthropogenic activity as well as poaching, because it is a technique used by poachers to pull out or push out the porcupines which are staying in the dens. And these dens made by porcupines are always or most of the times used by other animals like foxes or bulls or even hyenas for that matter. So in an attempt of hunting porcupines, even these animals face a grave danger of getting hunted down unknowingly. Instead
right.
of
and even some of the locals, because they don't know much about these animals, like so they're easily scared of even wolves, hyenas. They've rarely seen them, but because they're mostly active at night. For example, the hyena is nocturnal. So they're scared because they don't know a lot about these animals, and because they're scared, whenever they find such den sites of these animals, they just try to shoo them off or just block the den site so that the breeding will stop and they won't see the animal near their homes. And with poaching, usually locals they poach monitor lizards for
Francolins,
yeah, francolin and francolin, quails, and even hares. Yeah.
So that's more like bushmeat hunting than just hunting for some other procurements like skin or bones or wildlife trade in that matter. So it's not just about getting something out of it, but also food for a certain few communities in the area.
Yeah. And regarding poisoning and disease transmission, there is a bit of poisoning that happens in the landscape regularly.
More of a retaliation,
Yeah.
or rather, at some points, even unknowingly poisoning certain animals. Just their intention is different, but tends to poison the animal, which can lead to fatal incidences.
Yeah, we will explain that in detail. We have a video lined up. We have 2 videos lined up right now after this slide. So one will be about the risks of tree plantation in savannas, and the other one will be about poisoning. And then we'll just head on to disease transmission, I think. Yeah. So, right. I'll just quickly play the video for the risks of tree plantations on grasslands. switching back to the presentation.
So you can see how just mere and a rather good intention or well-intentioned activity of tree plantation or contour trenches can lead to a number of issues rather than helping the ecosystem in some way or the other. But rather, there are a number of issues which are lined up, which happen just because of one activity which is undertaken. So in case of tree plantation or rather conservation of grasslands, the best way is to restore or protect the existing savannas instead of going and planting the trees, considering it as a barren landscape. And in case, if at all, plantation is the only solution available, then we should always be getting in touch with experienced or expert botanists who will be able to help you study the geography and the location of the landscape which we are planning to go and plant trees, so that they can suggest you the kind of species which would be right and the number of trees which rather should be planted in that area, instead of going there with half knowledge but good intention to conduct tree plantation.
Right. And why it is more important to protect these grasslands is because grasslands host some rarely found untouched sources of water, clean water, which are rarely available, especially around cities like Pune. So grasslands also provide fodder for livestock, which we have an abundance of, and grasslands store more carbon than forests, which not a lot of people know about.
So it was an interesting fact to even learn that all we think about carbon sequestration or cutting down our carbon footprint was to plant more trees so that they sequester more carbon and store it inside them and reduce the amount of pollution that has been happening. So instead, if we look at the statistics, there is a fair amount of carbon sequestration that the savannas actually conduct instead of the trees being planted in the area.
Right. And so grasses prevent soil erosion, and in open savannas better than trees do. So the roots of these grasses are fibrous, and they're not tapering.
So they don't go deep inside the soil, but rather they spread on the surface and hold on to more surface soil than that compared to larger trees. So it's actually helping.
Yeah, and trees which are not found in grasslands cannot properly grow as well in grasslands. So it just doesn't make sense to plant any random tree on grasslands. And because mainly the soil layer is so thin,
they aren't able to sustain larger tree species, which rather want to go deep into the soil, which is obstructed because of the rock layer, which is immediately under the soil surface. So yeah, it doesn't make sense to plant larger trees and to just increase the tree canopy area.
Yeah, and guys, whoever wants the link to this video, you guys can just go onto YouTube and search for the Grasslands Trust. This video will be seen there as well. So moving on. So regarding poisoning, so when we go for surveys on field, most of the times our team are lucky to find wolves, like live wolves in front of us. But sometimes, unfortunately, we do find some dead wolves as well, and other dead wildlife as well.
Not just wolves, but
not just wolves.
A number of animals like hyenas, foxes, jackal.
Yeah, and what we usually do is we get in touch with the forest department and ask for a postmortem. We report it to them, and they do the needed procedure, and the results are out of the postmortem soon. And we have found out some disturbing cases of poisoning. So I'll just play another video, which is about a project which we have done for the Wildlife Trust of India, in which we analyzed poultry waste to understand whether any kind of poisoning is happening through poultry waste to the wildlife. Because in Maharashtra, we have a lot of poultry states, a lot of poultry is available.
Poultry farming is rather a buy or say, an optional or substitute business for more income, including agriculture as their primary occupation. So it is a good substitute which people have taken it up.
And unfortunately, a lot of the chicken, they die due to weather change or due to overeating and stuff like that. So locals, they're actually advised to dig a hole and dump the poultry inside.
So the protocols say that they have to dispose these dead birds in a disposal pit and generate a manure or fertilizer out of these dead animals and provide it to the farmers as an organic fertilizer for them. But instead, it is easier for them to dispose them out in the open, which forms a good, we can't really say good, but a fair amount of option for animals like these predators which are in the area to scavenge upon and to get easy food. So yes, this video describes how it goes and how it happens and why poisoning is going on.
In the last few years, our country witnessed the death of a famous tigress, Solo, in Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. Following this, another tigress was poisoned near Umred Karandala Wildlife Sanctuary. And then the Bagin Nala tigress and her cubs were poisoned in Pench Tiger Reserve. While key species like tigers face this threat, for lesser known carnivores like Indian grey wolves, the odds are tougher. Most poisoning cases that happen in the case of wolves and other carnivores go unnoticed as they are highly underreported and the incidents fail to fall under the umbrella of national parks. The Grasslands Trust team has been keeping a track of such deaths since 2012 in and around Pune. In the majority of the cases, the carcasses decompose before any evidence is gathered, but the team has been lucky to get the due procedure done with the authorities in the recent past. However, poisoning couldn't be conclusively proven. To address the threat faced by the grey wolf population, a rapid action project was undertaken with Wildlife Trust of India. In the Saswat region, poultry carcasses dumped by farm owners form a majority of the diet of carnivores of the landscape. Under this project, the Grasslands Trust team first identified sites of poultry dumps frequented by carnivores with the help of camera traps provided by WTI. Once the sites were fixed, random collection of poultry carcasses was done, and these samples were then sent to the lab for toxicology testing. One of the samples showed traces of phorate, an insecticide that effectively controls sucking pests, mites, and other major insects in row crops, which can prove fatal if consumed. Phorate and other pesticides like Rogor that are readily available in the market make it easy for culprits to poison the carcass and cause deaths to numerous wild and domestic animals. Recent studies have revealed that the Indian wolves belong to some of the most ancient lineages of the modern-day wolves, making them a key species for conservation. But still, threats like rampant habitat modification, mining, disease transmission from dogs, poisoning still continue to threat the last surviving population. The Grasslands Trust team is currently engaged in sensitization initiatives to educate local people, especially poultry farm owners, with the district SPCA and other government departments to take preventive actions to avoid more poisoning cases in the near future.
So yes, moving on from the poisoning condition to the diversity which is found in this landscape. So on the top left corner, we can see arachnids, like the scorpions in this case, different genus from ranging from isometrus, heterometrus in the landscape. Then there are reptiles and amphibians like this very unique marbled balloon frog, which only appears in the first week of monsoons, breeds, and again goes back into their burrows.
Yeah.
Then we have lesser carnivores like the rusty spotted cat, which is in the top right corner. Then we have jackals, and similarly we have a number of civets, which are frugivores but also go on to an insectivorous diet, and small Indian foxes in the area. In the central image, you will see a thorny scrub, which is found, a shrub which is found in the landscape and which depicts the area in certain. Then at the bottom, we have the larger carnivores in the area, that is the Indian striped hyena, the Indian grey wolf, and the Indian leopard, which is slowly covering up the or fringes of the grassland ecosystem or the savanna ecosystem in and around Pune.
Right. The tree plantation video which we showed actually mentioned about leopards because of the increasing tree cover, and also there are a lot of sugarcane farms nowadays around grasslands. So leopards prefer to breed in sugarcane a lot, and so yeah, they're being seen more often in grasslands than before. Moving on, there are also some very unique birds on grasslands, some of which are only ground dwelling. They can't even sit on trees, like sand grouse. This one is a painted sand grouse, and there's a large variety of birds in grasslands, ranging from birds of prey like the short-toed snake eagle, the red-headed falcon, the eagle owl, the lagar falcon, and there are some resident birds as well as many winter migrants, as well as some passage migrants. So, considering nocturnal species, there are also species of nightjar found around these savannas.
Like interestingly, Amur falcons, which are coming from the Siberian areas, which were first noted in the Arunachal area, which is an evergreen forest. They actually come down in great numbers in savannas around Pune and in Maharashtra to take refuge, to feed on the insects, and then move on to the African subcontinent. So it is not just about forests, but this neglected landscape as well.
Right. Another very interesting passage migrant is the European roller, on which I'm just pointing the cursor on. The Indian roller is right on top of it. So the Indian roller is a resident, but the Eurasian roller is a passage migrant, which passes on through our grasslands. I think, is it post-monsoon?
Yeah.
Post-monsoon.
Somewhere around August and September.
Right. Moving on, there's a variety of snakes as well.
So yes, as we can, or as we already know, that there are big four species of venomous snakes that we actually have all four of them in these landscapes, which is the saw-scaled viper, the Russell's viper, spectacled cobra, Indian krait, and then we have some semi-venomous cases like the cat snake, and the non-venomous venomous ones like the sand boa, Gunther's racer, or buff-striped keelback. So we have a huge variety of reptiles in this landscape. It's not just about birds or animals.
So, and it's not only about wildlife, the grasslands. We are a part of it as well.
Yeah.
And there are some human communities who live on these grasslands, and they're very important because they depend on these grasslands. And if we lose these grasslands, we also lose these communities and the cultural heritage, the ancient cultural heritage which belongs to them. And we actually have a good chance. If we protect grasslands, we can get to know more about them and maybe support them even more. So one of the communities is our farmers, and there is a lot of agriculture which happens on grasslands, and farmers come in regular contact with wildlife because wildlife not only use grasslands or wooded areas, but they also prefer to use farms, as I said, in case of leopards, and also hyenas and a host of other animals. So they prefer these green belts to move around because they get a lot of water in here, they get good shelter, and they also prefer to breed because they have less disturbance here. Once a farm is completely grown, not a lot of humans go inside it because it's quite dense. So it's quite disturbance free
more,
for
more than
wildlife.
just the refuge area for these animals. These agricultural landscapes also form vital corridors which connect two different pockets of savannahs, which connect them, and that is how gene transfer happens, or wildlife can explore more natural habitats than where they were actually born. So that is how a corridor system also works in terms of agricultural landscape.
We can easily see this around Saswad, where there's an area called Wagapur and there's an area called Singapore, and both these areas are connected by an agricultural belt. And wildlife actually prefers to use the agricultural belt instead of crossing roads. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Moving on, one of the key stakeholder communities of grasslands are Dhangars, who are nomadic shepherds, and they migrate from the Konkan area to the Deccan Plateau in monsoon when there's good green grass available on the Deccan Plateau. And once the grass disappears in winter and in summer, they move back to the Konkan area. And these are the people who own a lot of sheep and goat. And so wolves, hyenas, and leopards, they are regularly in contact with Dhangars because they hunt the livestock which they own.
So Harsh has a question in the comment section sorry to interrupt, but he asked if Indian rock pythons are found in Saswad area, but no, they are mainly forest species, but similar species of constrictors, that is sand boas,
Similar looking
species are found in this landscape, but not Indian rock pythons.
Yeah. Coming back to the slides, so this is how a Dhangar pen looks like. This is how they keep their sheep and goat inside. And wolves usually, they're smart enough to hunt through these pens as well. They sort of make the sticks fall, which tie the nets, and they just go in and hunt the sheep down. So yeah, Dhangars are in regular contact with the wildlife in grasslands. Apart from Dhangars, there are Pardhis who are traditional hunters and trackers, and they are very, very sharp people, and they have amazing wildlife tracking skills. Although traditionally they are hunters.
At times we have observed that they have better tracking skills than any expert in the field. They'll track down a particular animal much faster than any other person because they know how to deal and go behind the animal to hunt them down.
Yeah, in this photo, you can see a monitor lizard which was tied to a branch. And we actually managed to convince the people who had caught it to let it go. And yeah, it was set free later. So how do you guys think we can involve these communities further in the conservation of the landscape? Because Pardhis, if they keep on their traditional culture going on, like of hunting,
they have good tracking skills.
Yeah.
How can we make these skills or put them up to good use instead of hunting them?
So ecotourism is an option where we can involve these communities. As I said, Pardhis are good wildlife trackers. Farmers also see a lot of wildlife regularly, so they can report wildlife and actually help out people who come there to photograph wildlife or see wildlife or even film wildlife. So we can actually train guides. We can make these people guides and promote ecotourism, which will give them a good income as well and give them a good reason to protect these grasslands. Agrotourism is similar to ecotourism.
But we can use these corridors, like identify corridors and use these agricultural landscapes as wildlife tourism spots as well.
Right. And there are unique homestays as well, which we can highlight as a part of ecotourism or agrotourism. And cultural experience as well. For example, in this photo, if you see the dishes which are kept behind, I'm just pointing my cursor. These dishes were used by Dhangars to have tea as well. And then they just washed and again reuse them. Yeah, they reuse them to have curries as well. So there are and there are many other things, like the way they cook the food is completely different. So questions. Yeah, please add your questions in the comment box, guys. And we can also involve these communities to aid research projects which are going on in these grasslands, because we know so less about them. now a lot of researchers are actually stepping up and doing good research projects in grasslands. So the locals can find employment through these if they get in touch with researchers.
Basically, if the communities see any economic benefit from either of these activities, that is when they are going to notice the importance of wildlife in their area, and that is in turn going to help in conservation or putting up conservation efforts on a different level altogether.
So I'll just quickly run through this slide because we're running short of time. So what do we do at the Grasslands Trust? We do conservation projects, we do conservation filming, we also do research projects, and we collaborate with researchers, and we also conduct trainings. So in conservation projects, there's a recent project which we are doing called the Project Triadic, which is in collaboration with Rescue Charitable Trust and EcoDown, which are two NGOs. This project mainly is about wildlife monitoring, gathering data, research. Then the research part involves two Spanish scientists with whom we've collaborated. They are going to analyze the data for us, and it also involves awareness. So we're going to do people outreach programs. We are actually doing them right now. And a project like the poisoning video which you saw, it was that was about a project which we've done with the Wildlife Trust of India. And it's in the second phase now.
Yeah, it is in the second phase.
Yeah,
so
it's a rapid action project.
Yeah,
so now
the findings which we found from the phase 1 is going to be are going to be applied in the phase 2, and that is how policy level changes are to be made for conservation of these animals.
And conservation filming involves actually filming these research projects which are happening in these grasslands at the moment. Then we've also made a 32-minute long wildlife documentary, which we've dubbed in Marathi, and that documentary is being shown in villages across Maharashtra at the moment. Then again, you've seen the wildlife awareness videos. Some of them you've seen right now. Many of them are available on social media. We've done a series for Round Glass Sustain. And yeah, you can just go check out our social media channels for more of our awareness videos. And we're also supporting commercial wildlife filmmaking, which generates jobs and income for locals who stay in the grasslands. So yeah.
And it is going to result into wider range of awareness about the wildlife in our area, our savanna ecosystems. And along with that, along with filming projects, we have collaborated with a number of institutes where people have taken up wildlife research as their careers. So, for example, Wildlife Institute of India, ATRI, NCBS, Wildlife Trust of India, and international collaborations like this one in case of Triadic. So these are the collaborations, and we are looking forward to more for any research projects that even if you all come up with. So yes, these are the research projects which are ongoing as well as coming up in future.
And we also undertake training. So we've trained the forest department. We are a part of the rapid response team training project with Rescue Charitable Trust, in which we are training forest department to respond quickly to
any rescue situations,
wildlife rescue situations.
In fact, even mitigating conflict issues in case of leopards or any wildlife which is coming into contact with human civilizations. So,
yeah, and we also did a recent training for the forest department where we trained them as guides around Pune. I'll just quickly show you a last video of Project Triadic, which is our latest project. It is about monitoring wildlife, gathering data, and awareness. And then we'll just answer the question which is in the chat box after this video. This was a real quick video to explain you in brief.
More of a teaser of what we actually are doing in this project. You can just stay tuned with us on every Thursday to see what
On
new
Instagram.
findings have we found in this project. So if you saw just one cattle carcass had a variety of animals scavenging on it, including feral dogs, actual scavengers, which are hyenas, as well as predators, which are active hunters like the leopards. So it's not just the scavengers who scavenge on these carcasses, but a number of other species as well. So the deal is to understand how they interact within themselves and with different species. So that is, yeah. So coming from that point, if you saw that the feral dogs have been scavenging on these cattle carcasses or any other carcasses as well. So these are the major responsible factors for spread of diseases like rabies or canine distemper virus. So it is easy transmission through saliva as they feed on the same carcass.
So dogs and wildlife, they feed on the same carcass, and exchange of saliva can happen easily between these animals. And that's how diseases gets transmitted from dogs to wildlife. So diseases like rabies and canine distemper virus spread to wildlife. And recently, we just realized that we have come across a number of dead wolves in different conditions. Of course, some of them were decaying, like completely decayed. But it could be possible that many of them were affected by CDV, which is the canine distemper virus, which we recently
more than
found
the
out
case
about.
of poisoning,
Yeah.
which we earlier thought which was the major cause of their deaths. But it can be a 50-50 situation in case of dead animals, that it can either be a viral disease or a poisoning situation that has been found because of, say, anything like the pesticides, like 4-8.
So such scenarios are getting revealed because we are getting a chance to monitor the savannas around Pune and Maharashtra because of Project Triadic nowadays. So there are some questions in the chat box which I would like to take. But firstly, I would like to thank Sanctuary Nature Foundation for recognizing grasslands as a habitat which deserves regular attention and protection. And thank you so much for
Giving us
this opportunity to conduct this talk. So we'll just quickly go on to the questions which people have asked. Saurabh, is that okay? Can we just take?
Yeah. So we have some questions in the chat box, and I'm sure if you haven't put them on the chat box, you want to just ask them, just raise your hand and we'll allow you to talk. Then you can just ask them directly. Thanks.
So sorry, there are a few questions that have already been asked in the Q&A section. If you want, I'll read them out.
Sure. Yeah, we'll just do that.
So Madhu Bhatnagar ma'am has asked how they can involve senior students with enthusiasts like you.
Oh, sure. We are always up with volunteering opportunities or even internships for that matter with the number of projects which have been going on. So you can just get in touch with us over emails, which we can share, like email address, which we can share, or any of our social media platforms. And we can keep you updated with any possible opportunities which you can help. Or we are an NGO which is always up for donations.
Okay, great. I think that answers our next question, which was from Ansari Naba. He had asked if you all can create a sort of activity for this. The other question was from Harsh Shah. He's put it in the chat box as well. He had two questions. How do we start exploring the regions of Saswat, and how to avoid the big four venomous snakes in the region?
Right. So for exploring the regions of Saswat, Harsh, very good to have these questions from you, and I love it that at this young age you would like to go travel and understand these habitats. So I recommend going with a tour company who are experienced and ethical, who know how ethical tourism is done in these landscapes, because it's not like a wildlife safari you go on in a tiger reserve. So there are less restrictions here. That's why there is a risk that you'll disturb wildlife a lot when you go out there to explore these regions. So it's better to go with experienced people like experienced ecotourism companies who run tours in these grasslands of Saswat. And how to avoid the big four venomous snakes in Saswat? Would you like to answer that?
Wear your shoes and always wear full pants. Also, it is always like, so the major suggestion is to follow the paths which have already formed in that area, because that is what snakes try and avoid being in the place. avoid going into tall grass where a snake might be hiding or resting in the place. So that is how you avoid getting in confrontation with any of the big four venomous snakes.
And I think mostly the way you travel around in these grasslands is you use a car, and you should ideally be on track, which is a track which other vehicles have used. It's usually an off-road track, but it's better to stick to that track, so you'll naturally avoid these venomous snakes.
The best way is to stay in an enclosed area, say a hide or a vehicle, because the moment the wildlife sees a human figure, the figure of a typical creature that the human beings are, they get scared, startled, and their immediate reaction is to flee from that area. So the safest point for the animals and for us is to stay in an enclosed area and just observe from one place.
And there's another one from Bennett. Like, if anything happens in forest area, poaching or smuggling of exotic trees, they are reported under forest department. What about grasslands? If any illegal activities happen, whom it is reported to? So they're again reported to the forest department. Forest department is not only related to the wooded areas or areas which are trees, but also grasslands also come under forest department land. Forest department owns a lot of grasslands in Maharashtra. So you can report it to the local forest department.
So yes, on their website, you will get easy contact details for the forest department of that particular area, and you can just go and inform them about the cases that you have reported. So it is the same way as what happens in the forested or wooded landscapes.
I think that answers all questions.
Wonderful. I mean, I loved the films. We can see a lot of efforts have gone behind the films. And I had a question for you guys. So you spoke about ecotourism. Can tourism really be a viable option to save our Indian grasslands, given there are so many pressures that tourism creates? Elsewhere, we've seen that happening in real time. So what are your thoughts about this?
Right. So we are actually working with the forest department for making ecotourism possible in an ethical way here, before actually shouting out about it. So I think, it's a long process, firstly, and it's going to be different than wildlife safaris or tiger safaris, where you get to see animals, I think, more frequently than you would in these grasslands. So naturally, I think less people will prefer to go out in grasslands. So wildlife won't get hampered that way. If it's done ethically, tourism probably won't be harmful in grasslands. It's just a thing which we haven't really tried out in grasslands yet. So we are yet to know if it is going to be harmful or not.
I guess with proper trainings and awareness sessions, this can be put through, but only if it is conducted in an ethical way. Plus, as we discussed earlier, ecotourism is going to generate a good economic support for the local communities over there. So in turn, it is going to help us in conserve those animals, because they themselves will know the importance of whatever wildlife is there in that area. And if they are getting economically benefit, they themselves will carry out some activities or try and protect them, because if this wildlife goes, then there'll be less tourists moving in.
Yeah, I think the idea is to involve these locals, because they're there. The grasslands are most accessible to the locals, and that's why they can easily stop any unethical activity happening over there if they have a benefit in doing that.
Thank you, Trustees.
Welcome.
Yeah.
So I had a question.
Sure.
I wanted to know what the major threats are for grasslands in India, and what kind of laws do we actually have that safeguard them?
So we don't have specific laws for the grasslands separately. They are the same as that what are applied for any other wildlife areas or forested areas which are under the forest department. So we don't have anything specific for the grasslands side, to be honest. It is broadly covered under different acts like Wildlife Conservation Act or Environmental Protection Act, and all those have happened in the past.
And the major threats, I think we had listed them in the presentation, and I'll just quickly
Brief you through.
Yeah, brief you through again. So habitat alteration is one of the threats. Things like development of cities or modernization in these areas is a threat because it alters the habitat. Then there's also unscientific tree plantation that happens. That's also a threat. Then there is den blocking, which locals do, which hunters do, local poachers do. There's poaching. Then there is disease transmission. Like there are a lot of free-ranging dogs in these grasslands who feed on the same carcasses as the wildlife, and that's where they interact with wildlife, and diseases can spread. And diseases like CDV can be fatal. So a large amount of wild species, like a large population, can get easily wiped out because of canine distemper virus. So free-ranging dogs are a major threat again to these grasslands and the wildlife.
Yeah, more than just the disease spread, we have observed that these free-ranging dogs form their own packs and hunt down wildlife. Something like chinkaras, which is the Indian gazelle, or black-naped hare, which is the rabbit variety or hare variety in the landscape. So
there's also untimely grazing that happens. So it's not monitored by anyone currently, but I think we will, gradually work towards taking some awareness sessions with the locals who own livestock to make them understand at which time it is best for their livestock to graze on these grasslands, so that the grasslands can regenerate again properly.
Control grazing activities.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Are there any wolf population estimates from this region, or do you guys have any plans of doing that in the future?
As of now, we have a really old study which suggests that there might be around 2,000 to 3,000 individual wolves in India, which has been conducted by Jhala sir. But it is an old data. So, and considering the wolf as a really cryptic species and difficult to identify from one individual to the other.
For example, a tiger you can identify by their stripe patterns. Like each individual tiger will have a different stripe pattern. But in case of wolves, it's not that easy. Wolves, they all look the same. So it's very difficult to
estimate their populations. So yes, we do plan to or want to conduct population surveys,
and we have logged in a lot of data. We have data of many individual of wolves in Maharashtra, and we are currently trying to streamline it a bit and get it in a format which can be analyzed by scientists. So that will happen soon, hopefully.
Amazing.
The question: does the Grasslands Trust conduct safaris? Not yet. We are not into tourism yet.
I don't think we'll get into tourism, but definitely we'll stick to research and getting or making you more aware about all the research that we are doing.
And we will get locals who live there involved in tourism. We'll link them up with the right people. And soon I think you'll get to do safaris in grasslands.
I think Harsh had the same question. He had raised his hand.
Yeah, I just saw it in the question answer.
All right.
Any more questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
My question was, how does climate change affects grasslands, and how grasslands can help mitigate climate change?
So yes, as we already discussed, they are good carbon sinks. They do sequester a lot of carbon compared to what we earlier knew as. The basic idea behind carbon sequestration earlier was that only trees or larger trees or forest ecosystems control the carbon content in our atmosphere, but it's not the case. It's always, or also the grassland ecosystem or the savanna ecosystem, which has been sequestering a certain amount or quite a good amount of carbon in the atmosphere. So yes, that is how they are helping in or reducing the impact of climate change a little.
But grasslands are ancient carbon sinks, so they're very old grasslands. So it's better to protect them and keep them the way they are, so that I think they keep storing more and more carbon.
Are there any particular species of grasses which act more than others?
More than others. It now
I think
that
sequester more carbon than the other species or other POAC members.
no, that we really like. Honestly, we don't have idea of a specific grass species which will help in sequestering more carbon. But we should always stick to a variety of vegetation rather than going for a monoculture, because that is so. Considering the grass diversity in this landscape, we have two major varieties: one on which the animals can graze on, and the others which they cannot. So if you see the tall grass, the herbivores do not usually graze on these tall grasses. So that is more of a cover for the landscape than that of an option as fodder. So we or even if there is a study that a certain species sequesters more carbon, it is not suggested to just carry out a monoculture of that certain species, because that will affect the food chain in a certain way. Certain way possible is what we guess, because that has been observed in case of large tree species getting monoculture. For example, Gliricidia, if you have observed, on a large or a huge patch of, or let's say a certain great amount of area under forest department has been already been cultivated under Gliricidia plantations just to increase the tree cover, but which is an exotic species and it doesn't help the ecosystem in any possible way. It rather affects in obstructing any natural growth of other tree species and doesn't even help any local wildlife. So similar way, it can just affect the existing food chain if we just stick to one species of grass
And
or any particular species.
there are two grass species which were recommended by Dr. Mandar Datar, who is a botanist to us. They're native to Pune, these grass species. The first one is Dicanthium and the second one is Sehima. So these are edible grass species which can support wildlife who graze on these grasses. So those two options are good ones for planting.
Do you guys also have the list of the grasses present or which are there in Saswat?
Not really, but there is a recent paper published by Ashish Nerlekar and his team, which describes the vegetation of the similar landscape, and he has also mentioned the what we can see as the species which are unique to these savannas instead of that of forest ecosystem. So
grass species.
Yeah, it is mainly about the savanna vegetation, and you have.
But isn't Ashish Nerlekar working in Bunny grasslands?
Yeah, he has been working in Bunny grasslands, but this is
the geographical location is more diverse than Bunny, because Bunny is located near Kutch, and this is more of Western Ghats or the semi-arid region.
So recently he has worked in this landscape and not just Bunny. So you can definitely refer to the recent publications which he has come up with.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I guess that's all the questions. Thank you, Pratik and Vishwatej, for such a wonderful talk about such poorly known ecosystem and also places. No, I hope we can involve you more and talk with our students more soon enough. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for hosting us.
We'll definitely keep in touch with you all through our social media platforms.
Thank you, Vishwatej. Thank you, Pratik. It was lovely having you here. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tej.